Alright, this is SSLFamilyDad with Simple Suburban Living, and today I'm going to show you how to hook up a small utility sink or utility tub in your basement. Okay, so we're ready to get started here, and the first thing we're going to do is hook up our water supply to our utility tub. And so we're going to be cutting into our current water lines in the home, which means we have to turn the water supply off. So you want to locate your main water supply, whether you have a well or city water. You should have a main entry point for your water that comes into your house, and you want to go ahead and shut that valve off completely. Okay, so once you have the main water supply turned off, you want to look for a low point in the water system so you can start draining all the water out of that copper piping in your home. In my case, I'm going to use the drain on our water heater. This is the lowest point in your water system for both hot and cold water. You'll want to look for a little hose spigot that's usually a drain on the side of your water heater, always, somewhere near the bottom. In my case, I had to take the cover off here, hook up regular old garden hose, and I've got mine just draining into the sump crock here in our basement. So once you get this hooked up, go ahead and make sure you turn the water heater off. Turn off the gas valve, turn off if you have a power water heater, make sure you have it unplugged or turned off so that it's not turning on and firing an empty water heater. And then go ahead and open this valve and start to drain your water heater out. Okay, so once you have that valve opened up on your water heater, you want to come up to each level of your home and at least open one faucet. Usually I open a couple on each level. Bathroom supply faucets are fine, and sinks, but make sure you have it on hot and cold, so you have both hot and cold water open here, and you go ahead and open that up. And you shouldn't get any water coming out now. You should hear air kind of sucking back in, so it's letting the water flow all out of those copper pipes. You want to do this throughout the house and wait till that drains. Okay, so I've found a good location where I want to have the utility tub here in our basement, and this is all going to be drywalled here once this is finished, but I need to get the copper piping done in the wall cavity before I do that, obviously. So the first thing you need to do once you've located where you want the utility tub is locate the closest copper supply lines in your home. In my case, it's kind of lucky. I've got a set of hot and cold copper supply lines that are going up to our second floor right here, so I can tap into that. We're going to be tapping into a 3/4 inch supply line, and we're going to be reducing to 1/2 inch for our cold and hot water supplies to this sink. If you have a 1/2 inch supply, you don't want to tap into that because it's probably already going to supply something else, and you may end up having water pressure issues with that particular appliance if you cut into a 1/2 inch copper line. So make sure that you look for a 3/4 inch water supply line in your home to tap into. So that's the first thing you need to do. Once you've got that set, go ahead and get your pipe and fittings that you're going to need to run that over to the sink, and then I'll show you how we're cutting in and getting that all soldered together. Okay, so before we get started, just some things that we're going to need to do this project. We'll start with a bucket of water. You want to make sure you fill that up before you move on to anything else, because the water will be shut off in the house during the project, so make sure you grab a bucket of water. We've got our regular old soldering torch here. This is a Benzmatic. I actually did a video on how to solder and all the tools required, so I won't go into too much detail here. You can check out that video. I'll put a link at the end. You'll need obviously some brushes here to clean out your copper pipe and fittings, a good copper pipe cutter. You'll need some lead-free solder and some tinning flux. And as far as the hookups that I'm using, in particular I'm using 3/4 inch tees here, and then I'm reducing to 1/2 inch. And I've got regular old faucet hookups here, or valves. This will be soldered right onto copper. It has a solder fitting on this end, and then it's got a 3/8 fitting here that I can use to hook up my flexible line. And then this goes up to our sink hookup, and I will show you the type of sink hookup I'm using here at a later time. Also a good idea to have a pair of channel locks laying around. Those are easy to hold pipe that's hot and grab things down that or hold things with an extra hand. So always good to have a pair of channel locks, and definitely want to make sure you have a couple towels around, or shirts, or something that you can use that you can get wet and use to wipe off and cool down the copper when you're soldering. So that's what we need. We'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so this is the connection that I'm tying into. I'm just going to replace this 90 with a T, so we've got a nice 3/4 inch supply coming out of here, and then take it over to where I need to take it. Whenever you're soldering or using a torch around wood like this, or in a joist space, you want to try to protect the wood as much as possible. I know a lot of plumbers will just, scorch the heck out of all your joists, and one of the things I like to do, I've got an old license plate here, and I actually, I've used this for quite so many years. Just kind of wedge it in wherever you need it, and that just helps protect the joist a little bit. I've got a couple nails here I can use just to kind of tack it in place, and that's good enough. That'll just keep that flame off of our wood. Now we've got our 90s taken off here. We're going to clean up this copper pipe really good with our brush. So one of the things you can do, I've got some drips of water that continually are coming down here from the second story. And so one of the things we used to do is you can take a little piece of bread and just kind of shove that up in there, just kind of get it to stick. That'll absorb the water that's coming down there and keep those drips off your joints for now. It just helps the joint to seal up a little bit better and keeps your area clean while you're working. This is going to be where our utility valves are going to be mounted here, so we obviously want to make sure that this is secure. This is going to be drywalled over the top of this, but we want to make sure this is secure in the wall cavity here. Whenever you're working with copper pipe, you always want to use copper hangers or copper clamps. If you have different types of metal pressed together, many times that can actually cause a small electric charge, which can eventually corrode through your pipe. So you always want to use copper clamps here. So whenever I'm doing a project like this, whether it's PVC pipe, copper pipe, black pipe, or gas pipe, whatever you're doing, I like to put as much of it together first as possible before I start securing and tightening things down, making sure that everything lines up and looks the way I want it to, and then I can power up the torch here and fly through and get all the joints soldered. Okay, so I've got these valves here. This is a sweat-on valve, so you can solder it right to a piece of half-inch copper. Whenever you solder to a valve of any kind, especially these kind, you need to make sure that you take the actual valve piece out. There's a rubber seal in there that's going to melt, and it'll ruin the valve. So if you can't, if it's a big ball valve or one of those brass valves or something like that, you want to make sure that if you can't take the whole valve piece out, you have the valve all the way open and you wrap a cold cloth, wet cloth around the actual valve part to keep that as cool as possible, and then you want to solder as quick as possible and cool it down. So with this one here, I'm just going to take it apart and we'll go ahead and get it soldered on. Alright, we're going to let those cool down real good before we put those these valve stems back in here so we don't damage that rubber. Okay, so we're looking at the back of the utility tub here. We've got our little bathroom faucet we're going to install, and this is pretty simple. Just inserts over the top, and there's these little screws that thread on here. And then we've got our little flexible supply lines here. Those get screwed on here. Alright, I've given these a chance to cool down, so we'll go ahead and put in our little valves here. Okay, so once we've got everything soldered up there and the valves are shut off and we don't have anywhere for the water to escape, we'll go ahead and turn the water back on. Alright, water's all turned back on and we're checking for leaks here, and it looks like we do have a small leak on the 3/4 inch T, so we're going to have to drain the water back out of the system at least past this point here again and get that leak fixed. So sometimes things work out well and sometimes you miss things. So there's a little spot of solder I missed at the top there, and sometimes these things happen. So we'll get that fixed real quick and then we'll test it again. Alright, so I've got the water all turned back on, I got that leak fixed up, and everything's looking good, so no more leaks or anything else to deal with there. One of those things, whenever you do DIY projects, you never know what you're going to run into, you never know what can happen, so I always make sure I leave extra time in the day to take care of things like that. So last thing we have to do is just tie in our little flex hoses here, water supply hoses, up to the hot and cold supplies here, and then we'll give this sucker a test. I'm going to do another video on the drain. I'm not going to do that here in this video, so I'll link to the end of this video to that. So let's get this hooked up and see how it works. Alright, that pretty much wraps it up. We've got the water supply all finished here. We've got hot and cold water ready to go at our utility sink here. So I just have a bucket underneath it for the drain right now. Probably next week I'll get the drain finished for this, and I'll kind of take you along and do a quick video on that just to show you how we're completing this project. So I'll put a link at the end of this video. As soon as I get that one done, that link will be active and you can check that out as well. This is one of the things that we really just missed in this house we moved in. Couldn't believe that it didn't have a utility tub. We've not had a good place to wash off paintbrushes and gardening stuff down here in the aquaponics system, and no real water supply down here. So this is going to make a huge difference for us and be extremely useful here in the basement. So please hit thumbs up on the video if you liked it or found it entertaining or useful at all. I always appreciate that. That thumbs up makes a big difference. So if you can just reach down and click that thumbs up for me. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to follow along and check out other sustainable projects and DIY stuff and other things we have going on around the house here. We'd love to have you follow along. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. We'd love to have you follow along and share some of your experiences that you have at your home as well on any of those social media sites. So I'll put links to all that in the description, as well as any of the products that I use or talked about here. Will be links to Amazon associate links down there in the description if you want to check any of those out. If you have questions or comments, please throw them down below. And as always, thanks for watching. Have a good one.